Breaking news! The Detroit Lions are on the verge of a pivotal move that could reshape their roster heading into the new season. Now, all eyes are on two key positions, defensive end and interior offensive line. And if you've been following free agency closely, you know that the Lions' chances of landing a top-tier offensive lineman just got a whole lot better. I'll give you all the details about edge rusher Azeez Ojulari and Brandon Scherff in a moment. But before we get started, make sure you've hit the like button if you've been a Detroit Lions fan for over 20 years. It's great to see fans of all ages. Now, let's get to the point. Brad Holmes is on everyone's radar, and you'll soon understand why. The Philadelphia Eagles, who were in direct competition with Detroit for a defensive end and a guard, just made a move that could change everything. They went out and signed edge rusher Azeez Ojulari. That means they've already committed a chunk of their cap space to their defensive front, making it much less likely that they'll still be in the running for a veteran guard. And that puts Detroit in a prime position to sign one of the biggest names still on the market, Brandon Scherff. Scherff isn't just a mid-level free agent. We're talking about a 5-time Pro Bowler, a guy who's been an anchor on the offensive line for years. He's 34 now, but his skill set remains elite. The big question is price. Kevin Zeitler, a comparable veteran, just secured a $10 million deal, and if Scherff is looking for that kind of payday, Detroit will have to decide if they're willing to make that commitment. But if they can lock him up for around $5 to $6 million, this becomes a no-brainer. And let's be real, Detroit needs to solidify its interior offensive line. With Kevin Zeitler gone, the Lions are expected to roll with Mahogany as a replacement, but what about the other guard spot? That's where things get interesting. Graham Glasgow is still on the roster, but can he still be a reliable starter, or is he better suited as a versatile depth piece? Last season, his play tailed off toward the end of the year, raising concerns about whether Detroit should be banking on him in a full-time role. If the front office shares those concerns, making a move for Scherff makes even more sense. But while the offensive line is a priority, Detroit hasn't ignored the defensive side of the ball. They just re-signed defensive lineman Pat O'Connor. Now, let's be honest, O'Connor isn't a game-changer. He's not the guy who's going to take this team to the Super Bowl. But when injuries piled up last season, he stepped up. He was a disruptive force in the trenches before suffering his own injury late in the year. The Lions clearly like his potential, and his familiarity with defensive line coach Casey Rogers, who worked with him from 2019 to 2023, only strengthens the case for bringing him back. That said, the Lions still need a dominant edge rusher opposite Aidan Hutchinson, and free agency isn't where they're likely to find it. The draft is loaded with defensive talent, and Detroit is in a position to capitalize. A recent mock draft from Pro Football Focus had them taking Nick Scourton, an edge rusher from Texas A&M. His stats might not jump off the page, but that's more a reflection of the defensive scheme he played in than his actual talent level. Scourton is a high-upside player, and if the Lions are looking for a cost-effective way to address the pass rush, the draft could be the perfect place to do it. And speaking of the draft, this is where things get fun. For years, Detroit was picking in the top 10, where there's enormous pressure to get the pick right. Now, they have more flexibility. Sitting at number 28, they can let the draft come to them. Every year, top-tier talents unexpectedly slide, and the Lions are in a prime spot to scoop up a difference-maker without reaching. But let's not forget about the remaining free agents. There are still intriguing names on the market: Von Miller, Matt Pryor, and even some veteran corners like Rasul Douglas. The problem? Price tags. Some of these guys are still out there for a reason. They want more money than teams are willing to pay. Detroit has to be smart here. They can't overpay for name recognition alone. Free agency is full of guys who are great but are now on the back end of their careers. The Lions front office has done a great job avoiding those types of signings in recent years, and they'll need to continue making smart, calculated moves. So, where does that leave us? Detroit is in a strong position to upgrade the offensive line, and a move for Scherff feels increasingly likely. The defensive end situation will probably be handled in the draft, and bringing back Pat O'Connor adds some solid depth to the defensive line. There are still questions to be answered. What's the plan for Graham Glasgow? Could a quarterback still be in play? But one thing's for sure, this front office is being patient, calculated, and strategic in every move they make. Now, I want to hear from you. Should the Lions go all in on Brandon Scherff, or would you rather see them look elsewhere? Is Pat O'Connor the right guy to bring back for depth, or should they have aimed higher? And what do you think about Nick Scourton as a potential first-round pick? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget, the draft is right around the corner, and we'll be breaking it all down as it happens. But here's where things start to get even more interesting. The Lions' strategy heading into the draft has been anything but predictable in recent years. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have built this roster in a way that allows them to stay flexible. Unlike some teams that are desperate to fill specific holes, Detroit has the luxury of letting the best available talent come to them. and that's where things could get wild. Think about last year, nobody saw the Lions taking Jahmyr Gibbs as high as they did, but Holmes had a vision, and it turned out to be the right move. So while we're all talking about defensive end and offensive line, don't rule out the possibility of a surprise. What if an elite quarterback starts to slide? What if a top-tier wide receiver unexpectedly falls to them? What if they go all in and move up for a game changer? The draft board dictates everything, and this front office has shown they're willing to make bold moves when the right opportunity presents itself. But back to the defensive end situation. While the draft is the most likely solution, there's still a scenario where the Lions add a veteran presence to help Hutchinson right now. Free agents like Jadeveon Clowney, Yannick Ngakoue, and even a veteran like Von Miller are still on the market. The problem? Cost. Detroit isn't in a position where they need to overpay for a declining veteran, and that's the biggest hurdle with some of these guys. But if prices drop as we get closer to training camp, don't be surprised if the Lions pounce on a bargain deal to bring in another pass rusher. Now, let's circle back to the interior offensive line. If they land Scherf, this unit could become one of the best in the league. But if not, what's the backup plan? Drafting a guard is always an option, but plugging a rookie into a win-now roster comes with risks. This is a team that expects to be competing deep into the playoffs next year. Do you really want a first-year player in the trenches protecting Jared Goff? That's why a veteran like Scherf makes so much sense. He brings experience, leadership, and consistency to an already strong offensive front. And speaking of Goff, this is a huge year for him. He's proven he can thrive in Detroit's system, but let's not forget, his contract situation is looming. Do the Lions extend him now, or do they wait? The front office has been quiet on this, and that silence is telling. If they were 100% sure Goff was the long-term answer, wouldn't a deal already be done? Could that mean the Lions are at least considering drafting a quarterback for the future? It's a long shot, but don't be shocked if they use one of their mid-round picks on a developmental QB. And then there's the secondary. While the Lions have made improvements, adding depth at cornerback remains a possibility. Some big names are still on the market, but again, it all comes down to price. Rasul Douglas, Stephon Gilmore, and even a reunion with Quandre Diggs have been thrown around as options, but Detroit isn't going to break the bank for aging veterans. This team is building for sustained success, and every move they make has to fit into that long-term vision. At the end of the day, here's the bottom line. The Lions are in a position they haven't been in for years. They're no longer scrambling to fill holes just to stay competitive. They're strategically improving a roster that's already a legitimate contender. That's a testament to the work this front office has done, and it's why Lions fans should be more excited than ever about what's coming next. So now it's your turn. What do you want to see the Lions do next? Should they push hard for Scherf? Should they add another veteran pass rusher? Or is the draft the way to go? And what about Goff? Do you extend him now, or wait and see how this season plays out? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're locked in, because things are about to get very interesting in Detroit. Go Lions!